Welcome today to our second episode of our Hobby Farm Dream podcast. If you were able to listen to the first one, we kind of introduced ourselves on our little hobby farm and how we got started, and then also just told you a few things about what it means to have a hobby farm, what's the definition of it, and what kinds of things that you need to do if you're serious about getting a hobby farm. So that was kind of our first one. If you have any more questions on that, you can let us know and message us on Instagram. And also today we're going to go into a little more specifics in the next few of our podcasts. And today the one that we're going to talk about is our garden. And we did our garden. It's one of the very first things we did when we moved out to our hobby farm. And we were really excited to do that. We were grateful that we were able to have the means and the skills to make the grow boxes and to get the garden ready. Start small would be our recommendation. We started with a couple grow boxes and we chose a small area of ground for the few boxes to start at. And remember that you can always add more later. We tried to find an area of our yard that had full sun because we thought that would be better for getting more crops to grow. The best spot for us was on the north front side of our house. And that's worked out really, really great for us. So try to choose the best sunny spot in your yard and you'll be glad that you did. There are a few plants and trees and things that enjoy shade, but for the most part, it's growing vegetables or fruit trees and things. They like a lot of sun. Well, number 2 would be to choose a sunny spot, but number 3 would be to plant what you like to eat. For us, the main things that we started with in our spring garden here were tomatoes and peppers, because those are two things that grow really, really well here in the warm weather where we live in the low desert. So those are two main things that we planted in our spring garden. Number 4 would be to plant simple to grow crops. And like I said, for us was tomatoes and peppers. And don't forget, when you are planting even the things that you like to eat, to plant a few flowers in amongst your vegetables, because those will bring pollinators. Sometimes they will attract pests. Something like marigolds and things will have a smell to them that keep away pests. There's also other plants that you can plant in your garden alongside your vegetables that will be attracted to those plants instead of chewing and eating your tomatoes and things on those plants. Number 5 is to know what growing zone you live in. You can Google that, type in where you live, and it will tell you what growing zone that you live in at least in the United States. If you're outside of the United States, you may have to go to whatever your country has for growing zones where you live. Number 6 would be to make sure you plan a watering system to keep things alive in your garden. Where we live, it's like I said, it's a low desert. There's not a lot of rain here. Obviously, if you got lots of rain where you live, then maybe you wouldn't have to set up as much of a watering system. But here, we know that if we don't water things that they're going to die. And I've had lots of people that have moved from other parts of the United States that have told us, well, I can't grow anything in Arizona. Everything I plant dies. And that's true. It is really hot here, but you can pretty much grow all year round here. And we live in zone 9B, which is the low desert where we live. And if you know what your zone is, then you'll be able to find what the right plants to grow where you live. But also for us, we had to set up a good watering system. And so what we did is we did some PVC pipe with timers, and that's been a lifesaver for us. It's kept our plants healthy. It's kept them watered if we forgot to water them or we were out of town or really in the really hot weather. No matter what kind of watering system you put in, you need to check it often, make sure it's working. We've had times where the holes have gotten clogged or something has happened. They become loose from their fittings, and then we didn't realize, and then the plants are dying. So a watering system, no matter what you set up, is going to have to be checked often. And later on one of our podcasts, we'll have Floyd come on here and explain the PVC watering system that he has done in our yard, because I think it's a really, really good one. We've found that after all these years of gardening that it's worked best for us in our situation with grow boxes. And so I would like to have a whole podcast of him explaining how he set that up, because we've had lots of questions about it when people come to see our garden and wonder, how come it looks so great. And that's one of the reasons why it looks so great, is because it has a consistent watering system. And number 7 would be not to ever give up on gardening. I know there's times all of us have been discouraged. Believe me, lots of times we've lost plants. We've had our produce like tomatoes and other things eaten by bugs, worms, caterpillars. We've had our tomatoes bored in by beetles. We've had birds get different ones of our crops. We've even had our own chickens hop the fence, getting into our garden and destroying our garden. So it's not just other things, it's also your own animals in your own yard can get into your garden and destroy things. We've had the neighbor's dog escape into our yard and get into our garden, and we've even had a cow one time come into our garden from the neighbor's house. So there's always something that can happen in your garden, but no matter what, don't give up. Even whether you say you can grow things or not, keep trying. Remember, that is all part of the learning process when you're gardening. In order to, really have the best success possible, you of course find out the gardening zone, but also plant a few things that you like to eat. Believe me, when you get that first juicy tomato that's ripe and you have it and bring it in the house, or maybe like us, you eat it right out in the garden because it's all warm and red and juicy, it will be so worth it, and you will be glad that you stuck with it and that you kept trying. And not only is the taste of a garden tomato or homegrown food is out of the world delicious, you'll have the pride inside of knowing that you grew it yourself. Like I said, we did 2 grow boxes, and we did them 4 foot by 8 foot, which is a good size to start with. And the reason why it's 4 foot across is because it's easier to access your crops, like your vegetables. If you make it a lot wider than that, then you're going to have a hard time reaching across to access your food. And as time went on, we added more grow boxes. Some of our grow boxes are for herbs. Some were for flowers. Some were for strawberries. We did things like green beans, onions, cucumbers, and potatoes. We also added cattle panels to grow upwards in our garden, which added another whole dimension going up in your garden, which is a great idea also. We've also planted in our zone, we could plant peanuts. That was a very interesting thing to plant. It was fun to grow something different. I know my dad grew up in the South, and he grew peanuts in Florida, and so that was fun to actually grow them here, and they did really, really well. And another thing that we grew, which was kind of unusual, is we grew birdhouse gourds and also loofahs in our climate here. So try some interesting new things after you've got your basic garden down, just for fun, to see what they grow like, and it makes it exciting in the garden. We even one time planted a tomato in a pepper plant in a bale of straw, and it worked out great. They grew really well. They didn't put out quite as much as in our regular garden beds. You can try grow bags. You can try pots. If you have a small area, the grow bags and the pots can be moved around easily. So don't think that you can't grow a garden just because even you don't have tons of space. You can still grow something in even a smaller area on your back porch, or even inside your house or your window. You can grow herbs. Some of our favorite things about gardening are the great varieties of vegetables and flowers that you can grow. And when you grow a garden, you're not stuck with just whatever food your local grocery store sells, which is kind of nice. And with a garden, you can buy plants from your local nursery or different varieties that grow well in your area, and a gardening zone, as well as you can order seeds of all varieties online. One of the companies that we order from is Burpee Seed Company. We also order from Johnny Seeds. Another company is a Baker Seed Company. They have a lot of rare, unusual seeds. Just to explain a little bit, heirloom seeds are old, open-pollinated plant varieties, and open-pollinated just means that they pollinate naturally with the wind and the bees. And these are the varieties that are passed down through generations. They're known for their unique flavors and colors and resilience. And a lot of times you can save the seeds from the heirloom to grow other plants. The other type of seed that you'll hear about is a hybrid seed, and those are created by cross-pollinating 2 different genetically distinct parent plants to combine desirable traits that you want to have. And the hybrid ones are a lot of times the ones you'll buy somewhere when you buy plants, but also seeds that are that way. They have it like an improved yield, like you'll get a whole lot more that way. They're pretty consistent with what they produce. They have a disease resistance and uniformity. They all pretty much look the same. They're used a lot in commercial agriculture. If you save the seeds from there, they won't produce the same plant next year. So that's kind of the difference between heirloom and hybrid seeds. In our garden, we've used both types of seeds. We've used hybrid and we've used heirloom. We like both of them for different reasons, so go ahead and try both and see which ones that you like better in your garden. After we had our original 2 boxes where we planted just tomatoes and peppers mostly, and then we tried some of the other things, but we also built some 4x4 boxes to plant sweet onions. Those are something that we like to plant every year. The smaller boxes work great for easy access. And then later we added some taller grow boxes, which is what we're trying to do right now, is to get all our boxes taller because it makes it a little bit easier for tending to your crops and to your garden. You don't have to bend over quite as much when you're harvesting things. And so we've enjoyed having the grow boxes that are built up a little taller. We have used animal watering troughs to plant things in. We've used wheelbarrows. We have an antique milk separator that we have in our garden, and we put herbs and flowers in that. So you can pretty much plant anything anywhere you want in your garden, and it will look really nice. Just make sure that there's a way that it can drain out the bottom and that it has good soil in it. Some of our favorite things about gardening is the great varieties that you can grow. With the garden, you can buy plants from your local nursery. We've done that a lot of times. But just be really careful when you go to some of the big box places to buy plants. Sometimes they're selling you things that are not acceptable in your area, that are your zone. They may be things like, for us, a lot of times they'll sell things that are considered spring or summer crops way into the fall, and sometimes you can grow some of those things, but some of them are past the time when it's good to be planting them, like maybe they're right before the frost that's coming. And so be really, really careful. Do your research for your zone, for your area, and look at the weather, what kind of things and when you should be planting them according to your gardening zone and when your last and your first frost dates are. There are many benefits also to gardening. We found that out with our garden. First of all, you're growing your own delicious food, and it's fresh food. It means you have healthy food that does not have pesticides on it. And second, you're out in the sunshine. You're getting lots of vitamin D. You're exercising. You're moving your body. They say most of us don't get enough vitamin D, so gardening is a good thing that you can do to help keep your health better because you're getting all that vitamin D. And then third, you're getting exercise, bending, digging, planting, and harvesting your garden crops. And gardening is therapeutic, and that's the one thing, not just physically, but mentally. It can lift your mood and make you happy. I know every time that I go out into my garden, I come back feeling better and happier. Sometimes you'll get lost in your garden, looking at all the plants. You'll remember some things that you need to do in your garden, whether it's, water something or check something. You'll start looking at your flowers, and all of a sudden you'll see bees and butterflies and things that are flying around pollinating in your garden, and you'll suddenly realize that time has just flown by, and you'll be happier, I promise, and you'll feel much better. Gardening for me is a win-win-win, and it's a wonderful thing to add to your hobby farm. Something about growing your own vegetables and even fruit on your fruit trees in your garden is you have to think about what are you going to do with all the extra that you have in your garden, especially if you plant very much like we do. Like tomatoes, every year we plant lots with the idea that we're going to take the tomatoes and can some and make them into salsa and spaghetti sauce. We do a lot of the tomatoes also to give away to our friends and neighbors. We enjoy giving those out to people because they taste them and find out how delicious they are. So be thinking about when you plant, what are you going to do if you get a whole lot of them? For us, tomatoes is something that we really enjoy in everything. We eat it throughout the year. And so that's something that we plant a lot of because we enjoy taking care of it and harvesting it and putting it up for later in the year. Because we can't, at least where we live right now, we can't grow tomatoes all year round. We could if we had probably a greenhouse or something during the winter, but right now we can't do that, and so we have to bottle the things that we like to eat, like the tomatoes. Something that you can do also is you can dry tomatoes. We've dried some of them, and you can use them that way. You can also put them in things like salsa. We like to make a lot of salsa. We also freeze some of our tomatoes that can be made into salsa or sauces later on. We also grow a lot of peppers. The peppers, we love to use them fresh, of course. That's our favorite way. But you can also cut up and freeze peppers. You can freeze onions. You can freeze other things out of your garden, like even zucchini. I've shredded it before for later use in making like zucchini bread or green beans. We've done green beans in the freezer. We've also borrowed our canner from our neighbor. So you have to have a pressure canner if you're going to preserve things like vegetables and meats. You'll have to purchase a pressure canner. And that's something else that you can do with some of your garden harvest is you can pressure can it so that you can use it throughout the year. If you're making something like jam, you can just do that on the stove and put it in mason jars and seal the lids. And we'll have some more about that later on. But you need to be thinking about if you're going to plant a garden, what you're going to do with the excess if you're not just giving it away. Another thing is if you plant a fall garden or winter garden, if you're able to do that like we are here in our zone, things like lettuce are harder to store. You can freeze that, but it doesn't come out the same consistency. So I would say for the most part, things like lettuce are something you need to eat right when it is coming ready in your garden before it bolts. That something like kale, you can make into kale chips. You can also freeze kale. The same with spinach and broccoli. You have to first put it in really hot water and then cold water. It's called for a few minutes before you freeze some of those things, and they will last in the freezer, but they will have a different consistency. So all those kind of things you can research about what you can do with the type of things that you like to eat. And in the winter, we also grow cabbage and peas. Those are some things that you can normally eat fresh. You could put some peas in the freezer, and you could also, if you got a lot of peas, you could also can those. Those would also have to be pressure cooked. But be thinking about all the things that you grow in your garden, what you're going to do with the extra that you have, and especially if you plant a lot of them. One of the very most important things that you can do when you're starting your garden also is to make sure you have really good soil, and especially if you're growing in grow boxes. And that's why we choose grow boxes here where we live, because our soil is not very great. And we do use an open garden for a few things, bigger things like watermelon or corn, but for the most part we use grow boxes, and the reason is because our soil is not that great out here. So what we do is in our grow boxes, for an 8x4 box, which would be per 100 square feet, this is our basic soil recipe that we use in our garden. For one of our boxes would be 2 bags of compost, 1 pound of blood meal, and that's for the nitrogen. We use 1 pound of bone meal, and that has a little nitrogen and some phosphorus in it. And then we also add about 1 bag of Kellogg's brand organic garden soil. We mix all that together and put that in there. Then throughout the season, if you need to, you can add a little more nitrogen. There are some plants that don't need a lot of nitrogen, so just make sure you check your plants and seeds and find out what they need in the soil. But that's just our basic recipe, is with the compost, the blood meal, bone meal, and the garden soil. So if you do that in your garden and then you research what each type of thing would need, then that's going to help you to have a more successful garden, because the soil is probably the number one most important thing that you do is the soil. And just to recap really quickly about your garden and getting it started, is to remember to start out small and choose a small area. Number 2 would be choosing the sunny area, the best area in your yard to grow, where you get sunlight a lot. Also plant what you eat. The next thing would be to plant simple to grow crops. Don't try to do really extensive, really hard ones to grow. Try to do easy ones that grow well in your area, and to know what zone that you live in. Make sure you have a watering system to make sure that your plants are watered. Then don't give up on watering. Make sure that you have a really good soil to start with, whether you're doing it in ground or in boxes like we do. Then you'll have a lot more success in your garden. Also, keep an eye on your watering system, like I said before, making sure that it's still working so that your plants will be healthy. Another thing I would just add real quickly is that check your garden often for pests and catch them right in the beginning. I've always heard, which I believe is true, is if your plants for the most part are really, really healthy and you keep them healthy with water and with fertilizer, and they're really healthy looking plants, so you'll have a lot less problem with pests in your garden. And then add things slowly to your garden. You can add more boxes, you can add more plants. Just try not to take on too much in the very beginning because you'll be overwhelmed and you won't be able to keep up with all the things. So start out with a few things that you like, and also it might depend on the season of life you're in. If you don't have a lot of time to put up lots of vegetables in your garden, then just start out small and do really well with those 2 or 3 things that you like to eat. And then later when you have more free time to work in your garden, then you can add more things to it. So we just want to encourage you to start your garden, to start growing what you can, even if it's indoors, even if it's microgreens, even if it's in pots or herbs. Start out with something that you can grow your own, because you'll save yourself money and by growing your own a lot of times. And also you'll enjoy the fresh taste, and the taste is so much better that you can just walk outside from a pot or somewhere and get some herbs for your dinner, or you can get some fresh food for your family. We really enjoyed having a garden during COVID. It made such a difference to be able to have fresh food whenever we wanted. And so we hope that you'll give gardening a try and have success in it and never give up on your gardening, because you'll be glad that you did once you get started and you have some success. And I hope that you'll tune in to episode 3. My husband Floyd, who is really good at our watering system in our garden, is going to be helping out with the next podcast all about our watering system that we have set up in our garden. And I hope you'll tune into that. He will give you details of what he's done to our garden and the size of our garden and how many boxes his system waters. And it'll just give you an idea of what to get if you want to set something up like that in your garden, especially if you live in a warm place like we do that depends on watering in order to survive the hot summers. And so we'll have him with us on our show the next time. And so I hope that you'll listen to that podcast, and that'll be episode 3, all about our watering system in our garden. Thanks. Have a wonderful day.